As the banquet in the palace was about to commence, my mother explained the situation. Qingling had been led astray by a palace maid who first claimed to have forgotten the residence of the head maid, then said that the palace's hot water had run out. Sensing something was amiss, Qingling took the opportunity to shake off the maid and come find me. On the way, she ran into my mother, and after discussing with my father, they decided to inform Emperor Shaoqi. Consequently, Shaoqi led them to the side hall. Upon entering the grand hall, I immediately felt a sharp gaze coming from the side, like a cold, gleaming blade. When I took my seat and looked around, the gaze had vanished into thin air. I scanned the guests one by one, finally resting my eyes on Yi Yanyu, who was conversing cheerfully with the noble consort. The noble consort, Dong Xishuang, was a childhood friend of mine and Xiao Ruoyan. However, she was sent into the palace by Prime Minister Dong before she came of age. When Dong Xishuang first entered the palace, she invited me and Xiao Ruoyan to appreciate the flowers. Unfortunately, it coincided with the sudden miscarriage of the palace Lady Lu, and at that time, with no empress in charge and the dowager empress deceased, Dong Xishuang, being the highest-ranking consort, had to pay her respects. Thus, she had to send me and Xiao Ruoyan back to our residence. Initially, I thought it was just a coincidence, but that day when I returned home, I found a peculiarly fragrant jade stone in my purse. Upon inquiry at the pharmacy, I learned it was a musk stone that could cause infertility or miscarriage in women, and it was extremely rare due to its complex production process. I had to be cautious, and the next time I entered the palace, I heard that the palace Lady Lu had died of depression. When I tried to ask more, I was warned by the palace attendants not to pry into the palace's affairs. This was undoubtedly a warning from Dong Xishuang, sent through the attendants. She knew she couldn't hide her scheme from me, but she also calculated that I didn't have solid evidence to expose her at the moment. So she forced the death of Lady Chen, destroyed the evidence, and at the same time, warned me not to cause trouble and give up on finding out the truth. I indeed had no need to get involved in the disputes of the harem. Stepping back meant the matter was none of my business, but stepping forward would bring disaster upon myself. However, Dong Xishuang, who was willing to use everything to achieve her goals, I really couldn't force myself to continue to be close friends with her, and gradually we lost contact. Now, seeing Dong Xishuang and Yi Yanyu standing together, I couldn't help but sigh that birds of a feather flock together. The two naturally also noticed me, and their peripheral vision glanced at me like a poisoned hidden weapon. I don't know what method Yi Yanyu used to persuade Dong Xishuang to start dealing with me again. I felt uneasy in my heart, the music passed by my ears but did not enter, the graceful dance moved in front of my eyes, but it could not attract a bit of attention. I don't know how long it took, and then I saw a person standing tall among the ministers, about to say something to Shaoqi above. Yi Yanyu's scorching gaze fell on that person, unwilling to bite her lips. Then a palace maid with a blood-stained skirt rushed in, her face drained of blood, cutting off Shinjin's words, "Your Majesty. Your Majesty. King Yongning was assassinated," she said, looking around the guests in a panic, and after a long time, she stopped in front of me, slowly raising her index finger with dried blood. "It's her. She killed King Yongning." For a moment, the gazes that came were various, Yi Yanyu's eyes slightly raised, with the contempt of the victor, and Shinjin's eyes were unclear. Using King Yongning to kill with a borrowed knife was not successful, so he used King Yongning's body to frame me again. After all, I was born and King Yongning died, and King Yongning might really have died under my hand. Today there is a banquet in the palace, and you are rushing into the hall shouting and cursing that the imperial uncle was assassinated? What is the intention? Shaoqi looked at the maid warily, pretending to be uncertain. This maid saw the body of King Yongning, and for a while, was too frightened, thinking of reporting to Your Majesty first, so that Your Majesty can arrest the murderer. The maid was frightened by Shaoqi's gaze, her body shrank, and her voice trembled slightly. The palace has always been stable, and suddenly seeing the body of a prince must be a shock. Your Majesty, looking at her frightened appearance, it doesn't seem to be an act, it's better to send someone to check if it's true? After all, the prince being stabbed is related to the royal family's face, and it should not be lost. Dong Xishuang stepped forward and said, her eyes faintly sweeping over me while speaking. The noble consort is right, Shaoqi said while searching the crowd, really pretending to be ignorant of everything. Indeed, I haven't seen the fifth uncle today. Come, go with her to see if it's true. Shao Qi ordered. After the maid left, the lively and joyful palace banquet had already become everyone's concern. The sound of clinking glasses, music, and social chatter all dissipated, and the hall was as quiet as a needle drop. And Xin Jin, who was ready to go, has already sat down, silent among the ministers. Xin Qing, did you just have something to say? Shao Qi seemed to suddenly remember, breaking the silence in the hall. The gazes that were originally on me all rushed to Xin Jin, and Xin Jin immediately became restless. Xin Jin slowly stood up, holding a glass in his hand. Your servant just wanted to toast to His Majesty. As soon as the words fell, my eyes collided with Yi Yinyu's, and in the confrontation, I saw her eyes more and more proud. And Xin Jin indeed didn't give me a glance. I sneered in silence, scheming, not tarnishing the gloss on the surface. Xin Jin is still that Xin Jin after all. Giving up on marrying me, just in a moment, for fear that I really killed someone from the royal family and brought disaster upon myself. Killing me, marrying me, and stopping to watch the fire from the shore, all in an instant after weighing the pros and cons. I was thinking, suddenly I met Qing Yushan's eyes, and the worry was full, overflowing all over the ground. I saw him silently mouth to me, don't be sad. It easily blew away the heavy worries on my heart, my eyes curved, and I couldn't help but smile. I carefully held my breath, lowered my head and drank the wine in the cup, trying to use the sake to soothe the throbbing in my heart at the moment, for fear that the guests in the hall would hear the fierce drumming in my chest. But soon this emotion was broken by the returning maid and the body covered with a white cloth. When the white cloth was lifted, King Yongning's face had already lost its blood color, and his eyes still maintained a wide-open state, as if telling that he died with his eyes open. The wave of discussion grew larger and larger among the guests, and among them was a woman with a pale face, no different from the lying King Yongning, who must be that imperial concubine. Everything returned to silence with the sound of the maid's knee hitting the gold brick. What I said is true, and the one who was assassinated is indeed King Yongning. The maid's eyes kept glancing at me from time to time. The reason why I dare to be sure that this person assassinated the prince is because before the prince was assassinated, I led the girl to the place where the prince's body was found to change and wash. As soon as the words fell, I stepped forward in the gaze of everyone, knelt next to the maid. If only a few words can put the hat of killing the royal family on my head, then I can only say I am wronged. I turned my head and threw a glance at the maid. I don't know if the approximate time of King Yongning's death has been identified? It was about an hour ago. A palace person on the side came forward and said, I was drenched in mutton soup, and I couldn't wait for this maid to bring hot water for me to change and wash. In a hurry, I ran into General Qing. General Qing took me to ask for help from the emperor. So an hour ago, I was changing and washing in the side hall of Yongming Hall. This matter can be witnessed by the emperor and all the palace people in Yongming Hall. How can I divide my body to assassinate King Yongning? As soon as the words came out, Yi Yinyu and Dong Xishuang's faces were not very good. I can testify that every word Wen Ning said is true. Shao Qi's eyebrows slightly raised, as if he was secretly clapping with me. Moreover, this maid splashed mutton soup on me on my way to the palace banquet, deliberately led me to a remote palace to change and wash, and sent away my maid with the excuse of getting hot water, and has not returned for a long time. Now she suddenly jumps out and splashes dirty water on me. I have no grudges with you before, why do you want to harm me so much? This maid has not. Her eyes dodged, these are obviously your excuses. I saw the fierceness in Dong Xishuang's eyes from the corner of my eye, so I continued, excuses? My parents and my maid Qingling can all testify. Or do you say that the emperor and I are conspiring to kill King Yongning together? Can you afford the crime of slandering the emperor with this head of yours? The maid's pupils shrank instantly. Dong dong dong, she cowed out on the ground to beg for mercy. This maid has no intention of slandering the emperor, all is this maid's own guess. Yes! It was this maid who saw the body of King Yongning, and in a moment of panic, I wanted to take credit for my own wild guesses. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. A good wild guess. I clapped my hands and sneered. King Yongning has been living far away in his fief for many years, and I can be said to have no connection with him at all. And the place you led me to is the residence of a certain imperial concubine before her death, which is almost no one goes recently. How could King Yongning appear there for no reason? All of this is obviously arranged with intention. Maybe King Yongning was killed by you first and then the body was moved there. The maid's forehead was already a mess of blood and flesh. She looked up at me like a bloodthirsty ghost. It's not like this, you are framing me. This matter is obviously someone framing and shifting the blame. Such a small maid must not be able to plan so tightly, there must be someone behind it. Dong Xishuang's face showed a bit of indignation. This matter involves the murder of the royal family, and I advise you to quickly confess the person behind the scenes to avoid suffering. The voice showed a bit of majesty, seemingly helping others on the surface, but in reality, it was secretly exerting pressure. The maid suddenly deflated like a deflated ball, shrinking into a ball. After a long time, the maid raised her head, her eyes were dead. The one who instructed me was Yi Yanyu from the Yi Mansion. She hated Wen Ning for taking away her beloved and gave me 500 taels of silver to help her frame Miss Wen. She told me that King Yongning would have a secret meeting with the imperial concubine Xing in the Iha Hall, and asked me to lure Miss Wen into it, with the purpose of letting King Yongning find Miss Wen and get rid of her. But who knew Miss Wen didn't go in at all, so Yi Yanyu had to do it herself, killing King Yongning from behind when he left, and creating an illusion to frame Miss Wen. You're lying. It's not like this at all. Yi Yanyu shouted, her lips trembling uncontrollably, her eyes red. King Yongning was not killed by me, the one who instructed you is not me at all. She shouted and rushed to the hall, the beauty in her memory, now twisted because of her infatuation. Before she could touch the maid, she was held by the guards on the side, and Dong Xishuang gave her the final blow. Do you have any evidence? The 500 tael silver ticket given to me by Yi Yanyu has not been sent back to my home yet. If you search under my pillow you can find it. When did I ever give you a silver ticket? Yi Yanyu was so emotional that she tried several times to rush forward, but she was helplessly held down by the guards. Dong Xishuang glanced at her in disgust. Go and search, I want to see if it's true or false. I think Yi Yanyu must not have expected Dong Xishuang to have a hand and push all the blame on her, and was preparing to go all out. Dong Xishuang, you bitch. First, block her mouth, it hurts my ears. Shao Qi directly cut off Yi Yanyu's thoughts. Behind Dong Xishuang is Prime Minister Dong, and Yi Yanyu is just an orphan girl of a deceased general. Someone must take the blame for the death of King Yongning, and it's better to use Yi Yanyu directly rather than getting involved too much. Yi Yanyu's knees softened and she knelt on the ground directly. She was gagged with a white cloth, making wow-wow sounds, and looked at Shin Jin with tears in her eyes. Unfortunately, until she was dragged away, Shin Jin's gaze never fell on her.